Okay, so this is back on air. That's interesting. Starting soon. Why is it starting soon? Why isn't it started? I've already started the broadcast quite a while ago. That's bizarre. I'm live, but the video says I'm starting soon. Why would that be? There we go. Okay, that's good. So this is back on air. And this is still on a very long. That's interesting. So that's still an issue, but maybe it'll catch up. We'll find out. Starting soon. Why is it starting soon? Why isn't it started? I've already started the broadcast quite a while ago. 2, 3. That's bizarre. I'm live, 5, 6, but the video says I'm starting 7, soon. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Why would that be? 13, 14, 15. There we go. 16, okay, that's good. 17. So this is back 18, on air. This is still on a very long. That's interesting. So that's still an issue, but maybe it'll catch up. 26, we'll find out. 27, 28, starting soon. Why is it starting soon? 31, 32. Why isn't it started? I've already started the broadcast quite a while ago. That's bizarre. I'm live. So the video says I'm starting soon. I don't know why the delay is so severe. 10, 11, 12. Why would that be? 13, 14, 15. There we go. 16, okay, that's good. 17. So this is back on air. This is still on a very long. That's still an issue. Maybe it'll catch up. Maybe it'll catch up. 6, find out. 27, 28. Starting soon. Why is it starting soon? 31, 32. Why isn't it started? I've already started the broadcast quite a while ago. I can't actually see this. I'm live. So the video says I'm starting soon. I don't know why the delay is so severe. 10, 11, 12. Why would that be? 13, 14, 15. There we go. Okay, that's good. 17. So this is back on air. This is still on a very. Close that down, and we'll see if this gets any better. Yeah, well, this is why we try things. It's an experiment. That could have been a much higher quality thing, for all we knew. Worth a try. It is disappointing about that mini. We have to rethink our strategy on that. There seems to be no. Okay, there's the analytics. Hello again, Validus. Oh, okay, so that refreshes every like 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something. I get this little statistics page on the buffet on YouTube, and that shows me some of the comments, but it's refreshing. That's more like every 30 seconds maybe, so that's not really a good way of looking at the chat. Okay, interesting. Don't know why I'd expect that higher end system that's pushing bits directly to YouTube to be, well, obviously it was higher quality in terms of video, but it was, the network stuff wasn't so great. So I'm betting what's happening really is that the video tool, I may do some more experimentation offline, that tool was just pushing out a constant number of bits, whereas this Hangout tool is able to vary that depending on things. So you get guaranteed quality out of the other tool, but if your network can't keep up with it, then you get those sorts of delays and those problems. So that's the thing. And there's probably a setting in there that would let it, skip down or otherwise handle it. So I can also try doing something where I lower the quality, significantly and try that stream, then pull it back up. So I'll play around, but it's good to know that is not as effective as this tool until I play around with the settings and get something really really effective. So this is still the good old standby, so to speak. The neat thing about these analytics is they show me not only how many folks are streaming, but also how many folks are streaming different quality streams. So I see that 2 folks are streaming at 360p, nobody's streaming at 480, somebody's streaming at 240p. That's interesting. And I get number of playbacks, number of average average duration of views, number of viewers concurrently. That's pretty darn interesting. Good. Please correct the frame rate of the video to 30 frames per second. I don't think I can do that. Bandwidth usage. It's on highest quality. And I just want to turn things off. How could I do that? There's no help on that message. So YouTube is telling me that I need to correct the frame rate of the video to 30 frames per second. But I don't have a way of doing that in Hangouts, so I don't know why they're telling me to do that. Like, their tools don't give me that option. Just check that again. Yeah, weird. Don't know what they're trying to do there. Certainly working. So, another deal. Yeah, so now a few folks streaming at 480p. I should be streaming at 720. So you should technically be able to get a 720p stream. We'll start the news in about 10 minutes, by the way. Okay, so Zachary's the one on 480. What have I been watching? It's a good question. What have you all been watching, first off? What I've been watching is, actually, I've been watching Doctor Who. Not much in the way of anime, although I think I saw something this week. Maybe. You check my view folder, see if there's anything in there that I obviously think of. But I've been going back to some of the very old, like 1960s era Doctor Who episodes and watching some of those. Several of them were recently rediscovered. They were actually lost for many, many years. And some tapes were discovered, and so the episodes were reconstructed and resent out. So I finished watching a couple of those. And neat seeing something that hasn't been seen for 50 years. And then also just going back and watching some of those, shows that are, it's interesting. I mean, the thing about Doctor Who is it came from a time when a lot of those stories were being done by classically trained actors, and the writers structured the stories more like science fiction literature, for example. In fact, Douglas Adams was one of the writers on Doctor Who in the 70s. But going back into the 60s, a lot of those stories are not nearly as cheesy as you might expect. Now, the special effects are certainly cheesy. Some of the acting is kind of overacting. But overall, several of the stories are quite dramatic. They're structured as these taut little thrillers. And it's been interesting to going back and seeing those stories that are presented that way. So that's been fun. The Cybermen look pretty stupid, to be honest. But they did not have a lot of budget. They were still figuring it all out. That's fine. I also had a weird experience. I was looking up some data about actually, Zachary, it was New Zealand. They were found in New Zealand. It was weird. Okay, so set for 720, but it looks like very few folks are automatically getting 720. Interesting to note. I'm not suggesting everyone jump to 720 if you don't want to. I'm just interesting to see that even if you're streaming 720, most folks don't have that network quality normally. Yeah, I found in New Zealand. I was going to say something else. So I was reading up on some Doctor Who stuff and came across this odd reference where they were on the official, well, not the official, but the biggest Doctor Who wiki, and they're pretty careful about their sources. They don't quote non-official sources. And even stuff that's like been published by the BBC but hasn't really been incorporated in. They're very careful about. And then there's this reference about how I think it was the second Doctor faced the Cybermen on some planet along with Captain Kirk, Spock, and Scotty. I was like, how does this fan fiction work in here? Well, it turns out there is an official comic book crossover where the Doctor has adventures with the crew of Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek The Original Series. And this is all officially licensed, and it was published, and it actually happened. It's there. You can go and read it. So, canonically, according to both Paramount and the BBC, the Doctor has adventured with Captain Kirk and Captain Picard. Which I think is pretty awesome. Silly, but awesome. I have not seen Jormungand. Good about us. Watched a Porco Rosso only yesterday. Only Yesterday is an interesting film. That's a film that kind of doesn't get a lot of attention, and it's kind of an odd little film, but very satisfying. Especially that final sequence in Only Yesterday kind of ties everything up very nicely. Yeah, no, and that was one of the reasons why they couldn't find the tapes, is that they were off in some attic in New Zealand somewhere. Garden of Sinners. I saw the first Garden of Sinners movie, and was just blown away by that. I would very much like to finish that. I think I got that on DVD or Blu-ray at some point. So I think I have that sitting around. Something else to watch. In fact, tomorrow I might sit down with some anime. I have a feeling, I kind of have a desire to do that. It's been a while. Yeah, spring season's almost here. That's true, anime guy. Got some more Mushishi coming. Some more stuff from Masaki Yuasa. Some interesting stuff. The Break Blade or Broken Blade series thing. Interesting. Spring season's usually one of the more interesting seasons. Winter's usually pretty quiet, although we got some fun stuff this season. I'm watching Space Dandy. Cool. Yeah, Space Dandy is very Douglas Adams. From what I've seen of it. After the third episode, I was like, not for me. But that's fine. That's just the thing. So we'll start the news in a few minutes here. The Classic Club will be interesting today. I actually have not seen, I don't think I've seen this Diablomon movie. So it'll be a new one on me. Diablomon Strikes Back. And we'll watch some Tamers next week, I believe. Yeah. The Adventurers Battle and the Runaway Digimon Express. We might do the Runaway Digimon Express first, because that's the most absurd one. We'll have to find out. I mean, you can never predict what anime is going to be hyped. It all depends on what comes out and what folks get excited about. I never thought Attack on Titan would get all this attention. So who knows? I was surprised that Free was so controversial. And I was surprised that Gargantia didn't get a lot. I thought Gargantia would get more attention than it did. I'll put it that way. So it's hard to say. Hey, Camille. Camille! All right. Let's fire things up and get to the news. Just firing up the software here so we can actually record. Make sure we've got the settings right. Yes. And welcome back to the anime and manga news for the week ending March 8th, 2014. Starting with some movie news, quite a bit of movie news actually. There's a trailer for the next Doraemon film that dropped this week. It's the first CGI film within the Doraemon franchise, that being a very popular kids franchise. And the narrator calls it the first and final Doraemon story. And in the trailer itself, Doraemon tells Nobita, the main character, "I can't stay here anymore." What does this mean for Doraemon? We shall have to find out. Kind of surprising. Meanwhile, some news about The Wind Rises and Hayao Miyazaki. The Wind Rises won the animation category in the 37th Japan Academy Prizes, basically Japanese Academy Awards. This is, I believe, only the 7th year when the Animation of the Year category existed. It's only been around for 7 years. The Wolf Children won it last year. So that's nice. He was competing against The Tale of Princess Kaguya, as well as Captain Harlock, Mononoke Magica, the movie Part 3, and Lupin III versus Detective Conan. The soundtrack by Joe Hisaishi also won Best Soundtrack. He was actually Hisaishi was nominated for actually 3 different films: Tale of Princess Kaguya, Wind Rises, and Tokyo Family. See here, I believe we also had also in Wind Rises news there was a talk with Toshio Suzuki, where he told an American audience that Hayao Miyazaki actually wanted to make Ponyo Part 2 instead of The Wind Rises. He wanted to do more in the Ponyo world. Suzuki was explaining the role of producer. What does a producer do? And Suzuki wanted Miyazaki to adapt his own manga, The Wind Rises, instead of doing a sequel to Ponyo. John C. Reilly, who was doing the presenter, apparently noted that Suzuki did the exact opposite of what an American producer would do. You know, do something original instead of a sequel. Doesn't sound very, very Hollywood. Thank goodness. Meanwhile, a trailer has dropped for the upcoming Saint Seiya CG film. A 101-second trailer has dropped. This will adapt the Sanctuary arc from Saint Seiya. So head on over to Anime News Network for the trailer on that one. Also, a new trailer for the upcoming Akame ga Kill anime series, adapting a manga. It's a dark action fantasy story about a girl assassin. So it should be interesting to see where that goes. That is from Gangan Joker magazine. Also, we have some more information about the upcoming Majin Bone anime series. This is from Bandai and Toei. It's about the creator of the universe who's been resurrected in the present day. And looks like it has some kind of card game element into it. The main character transforms into the Bone Fighter Dragon Bone. I'm not making that up. With the Bone card. A lot of bones. To save the Earth. We'll see where that goes. Meanwhile, over in Russia, and no, I'm not going to talk about the Ukraine, a man has been sentenced to 3 years in jail for disseminating Japanese animated child pornography. This is the first time a defendant in Russia has received jail for this crime. Kind of interesting in and of itself. And I'll explain more about this in the backstory, and particularly about child pornography laws around the world and how they have to do with anime and manga and how that's depicted in that, and so forth and so on. So stay tuned to the backstory for more information on that. Moving on to some manga news, a new manga, or a new award for an existing manga. The creator of Tekkon Concrete also did a manga called Sunny Manga. That's actually the term, Sunny Manga is in the name of it. And it received the Best Graphic Novel Prize at Slate Book Review and Vermont Center for Cartoon Studies Cartoonist Studio Prize. Let's see here, this is from a short list of 10 nominees. Matsumoto will receive $1,000 as a result of this. It's a slice of life story about kids at an orphanage who have this car called Sunny, which takes them on adventures, basically. So, interesting. Sounds like a manga worth checking out. Crunchyroll has announced they will be releasing 4 new one-shot fairy tale manga on the Crunchyroll manga service. They'll be available all access for all access viewers and manga members worldwide, except in Japan, South Korea, Lebanon, Belgium, France, Germany, Luxembourg, Poland, Switzerland, and Morocco. Sorry, guys. Let's see here. They start the one-shot. Oh, there are a variety of them going in there, and if you like fairy tale, go check it out on Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll also added 3 Moyoko Anno manga, as well as Investor Z from Norafusa Mita. So you want to check those out. See here, Memoirs of Amorous Gentleman, Buffalo 5 Girls, and The Diary of Uchibi-san are now available on Crunchyroll. Meanwhile, there's going to be a new spin-off of GTO in manga format, done by manga creator Toru Fujisawa. So he's already done a spin-off involving, let's see here, who was it? Ino Head Gargoyle was a spin-off of GTO. It's not clear whether this is a spin-off of that, or a spin-off of GTO, original story, or where that's going within the GTO universe. Just that it's going to be a GTO spin-off. We'll find out. Yen Press has announced they're going to be printing 3 different Haruhi Suzumiya anthologies in 1 volume, 528 pages of Haruhi Suzumiya in 1 omnibus. This will combine Suzumiya Haruhi no Kyoen, Suzumiya Haruhi no Shukosai, and Suzumiya Haruhi no Kenran. That's 3 of the 4 anthologies that have been released in Japan. Head over to ANN for the cover images for all 3 of those. One featuring Haruhi in a bathing suit. Sweet. Let's see here. Meanwhile, a few other little bits and pieces. Viz has announced they've licensed Assassination Classroom in the Resident Evil manga. Assassination Classroom is a action comedy series about a class full of students who have to kill their teacher that also happens to be this like planet-consuming monster. As you do. And then, of course, Resident Evil manga. The first volume of that will ship in November. Viz has also licensed Master Keaton by Naoki Urasawa, who also did Monster and Pluto and a bunch of other interesting stuff. The anime of that was released by, I believe, Right Stuff a while back. So that's pretty cool. He also did 20th Century Boys, one of them more successful ones out there. So I apologize. Jenny-on did Master Keaton. That was my mistake. Master Keaton is sort of a more realistic James Bond character. So take sort of more early Bond, where it's not quite as absurd as the more recent series. And you have a character who is jack of all trades, kind of a spy agent person. Very interesting. New Gundam manga on its way. It'll be called Gundam After Jaburo, referring, of course, to presumably the events at Jaburo Base in original Gundam's 1-year war. It'll be the story of betrayal and the rebirth that disappeared. I have no idea what that means, but sounds cool. First chapter will be 46 pages, premiering in Shonen Sunday in May. In Japan only, sorry. A few other bits and pieces. There's a new Evangelion spin-off manga coming in April. Young Ace magazine announced writer Yushi Kawata will be writing it, and Yukito will be drawing it. Yukito also drew the Don Juan manga. The tagline is, "The stage is Eva and game department. Look out for this unique combination." Not quite sure what that means. The writer also wrote Mogitate Idol Ningen, which I have not checked out before, but at least written something else. That's not a bad thing. So of course, more Evangelion. Everyone will get all excited about that. The style does look a little bit different. Finally, Katakawa has announced an upcoming app called Comic Walker, which will provide manga around the internet. Launch on March 22nd. Manga will be available in Japanese and English, as well as traditional Chinese. You'll be able to read it on smartphones and PCs. 200 different works will be available for free. Presumably other stuff will be available for pay. More titles will be added as it goes on. They're also working to translate various aspects of the app into various languages. I think initially the interface will be Japanese only, but they'll eventually add English, menus and such. But you'll be able to read the stuff. It'll feature 150 past and present works, including Non Non Biori, Nobunaga the Fool, Sergeant Frog, Tonari no Seki-kun, plus 50 original titles. That'll be interesting. And the original titles will eventually be published in book form. They plan. So this won't be a purely digital initiative, which is kind of shuffled off into a corner. This is part of their overall manga strategy. They'll also include the Neon Genesis Evangelion manga by Sadamoto and Yasuhiko's Gundam The Origin manga, and they'll both be available in color, which is pretty cool. Another neat feature here is that users will be able to create their own magazines. So you'll be able to take a bunch of different titles and combine them into a magazine that you can read, just like Shonen Jump or any of the other magazines. Then you can restructure that around. You can kind of build your little kind of RSS feed in manga magazine format, which I think is a neat way of approaching it. And the app will also suggest series based on what you read. Pretty normal stuff. So that's pretty cool. Again, that will launch on March 22nd. No other news about availability or and it says smartphones. Presumably that means iOS and Android. We'll find out. So that's the news for this week. Stay tuned for the backstory. As always, thanks to AnimeNewsNetwork.com and Secret Agent Vincent for all the news. And thanks for watching. See you next week. All right. All right, so now we will do the backstory. Wrong shortcut. There we go. So I want to talk about the child porn thing. I'll probably talk about Haruhi. I think that's all I really need to mention. There's not too much else here that's confusing. The Doraemon thing is worth mentioning. So I'll do Doraemon and the Russian child porn thing. And Haruhi. Okay. Sorry, just getting myself sort of structured. So that's Mogitate Idol Ningen. Ningen is human. Idol is obviously idol. Don't know what Mogitate is. Came out in 2010, and there are a bunch of cute. Well, there are a couple of cute girls on the cover, so it looks like a pop idol sort of story. Interesting. Okay. That's the writer of the new Eva thing. We'll find out. All right, do the backstory. And welcome to the backstory for the week ending March 8th, 2014. This is where I explain the backstory behind some of the major anime and manga news stories of the week. Starting with the news of an individual in Russia who has been sentenced to 3 years of jail time for disseminating Japanese animated child pornography. As I mentioned in the news, this is the first time that someone in Russia has actually been sent to jail
for this crime. So presumably folks have been arrested for it, and they may have been fined, for example, but they've never actually been thrown into jail for it, which implies something is pretty serious here. The defendant, who resides in Volgograd, was accused he uploaded 6 volumes of anime onto a social networking site and kept them up from 2010 through 2013. So that's probably why the book was thrown at him. This wasn't just a throwing something up there for a few weeks. The interesting thing is that the anime in question included minors aged 14 through 18 in sexual situations. Now, in Japan, you can get away with that because of because of age of consent in Japan. The age of consent varies from area to area and section to section within Japan. So it is legal to portray 16-year-olds, for example, having sex in Japan, depending on where you set it, because it can be perfectly legal there. So that's one of the interesting things here, is that this is not child pornography in the sense of young children. It's pornography in the sense of what Russia defines child pornography. Now, I bring this up because different countries have different laws about what constitutes child pornography, and it's quite complicated because in some countries it is simply a matter of very well-defined rules about what you can or can't show. In some countries, child pornography laws are actually rolled up as part of other laws. So, for example, in Japan, for a long time, there were no explicit laws against child pornography. Those were all part of the obscenity laws. So, child pornography was certainly illegal in Japan. There are plenty of cases about it, but it wasn't explicitly called out in law until quite recently, actually. I think it was 5 or 10 years ago that they actually wrote law specifically about child pornography. So again, it depends on how countries define this and handle it. I think it says a lot that this is the first time in Russia they've actually jailed someone for it. Generally speaking, child pornography is such a significant thing within the law that if someone's caught for it, they throw the book at them and they try to nail a person as much as possible. So this implies that Russia has been very lax about this in general. This might be because it's considered a mild thing, especially if it's anime. I mean, that's a little different than real physical child pornography. So it could be that Russia has said, okay, if it's anime, we're probably not going to go after you too much. But clearly this guy had it up for a long time. We don't have much more information about this beyond that story. I can see if I can dig into that and find out more information about the details of the case. But this does highlight the fact that you should be aware of the laws in your country about what constitutes child pornography and what is or is not legal to have around there. It's worth knowing. Meanwhile, moving on to something a little less creepy. New Doraemon CGI film. Doraemon is a very, very popular manga and anime franchise going back decades. It first launched, I believe, in the 60s in Japan. The anime has been going since the 70s, and by going, I mean there are new episodes being produced today from a show that started in the 70s. That's how long this show has been going on. And they've announced a new CG film, and in which the narrator stated, "This is Doraemon's first and final story," which is kind of remarkable. And Doraemon tells the main character Nobita, "I can't stay here anymore." So this implies that this might be tying up the Doraemon franchise. That would be surprising. It's kind of like making a final Sesame Street story. Why would you do that? We'll see. The stronger implication is that this is more of a self-contained story that will tell a kind of a side story that goes in some kind of a loop. Mainly because Doraemon is a robot cat from the future that's sent back to be, well, he's sent back in the past to our present and has adventures with Nobita, the main character. So should be interesting to see where that goes. And it's remarkable that a children's film is taking that step and even in its trailer, suggesting this might be the final Doraemon movie. Is it a gimmick? Maybe, but it's still an interesting way of doing things. Finally, I wanted to mention, what was it? Oh yes, the Haruhi Omnibus. So Hatchet Book Group has announced that they're going to release a 500-page anthology of Haruhi Suzumiya stories. Now, this is worth mentioning because the Haruhi kind of publication situation is a little complicated in terms of the number of different things out there. This is a collection of manga and illustrations by different artists, and presumably different writers as well. And so it's not, as far as I understand, canonical stories within the Haruhi universe. It's just different side stories involving the characters. So we're going to have 500 pages worth of these anthology stories. There were actually 4 different anthology stories released in Japan, but presumably Hatchet only was able to license the first 3. I'm not sure when the 4th was released. It could have been a very recent release, so they could have just not been able to grab that yet. And that's separate from the original light novels. Haruhi started as a series of novels, light novels, short novels, in other words. They were then adapted into anime, and there were various manga spin-offs and so forth and so on. So this is just little side stories, short side stories set in the Haruhi universe, separate from those light novels which tell the canonical story, if you will. And that'll come out on October 28th, called The Celebration of Haruhi Suzumiya, retailing for $26, which means you'll get it for probably 18 or 20 when you go out there. And check out ANN for the covers. There's some really cute covers, actually, for that. I hope they use the 3rd one, actually, because it has Haruhi holding a page of manga. It's kind of a cute little self-referential thing. So we'll see. So that's some of the backstory on what's going on with Haruhi. And so that's it for the backstory for this week. Thank you for watching, and see you next week. Okay. So that explains that. Hopefully that's not too confusing to folks. Yeah, it's really cool to see this new app directly from Kadokawa, because that means it was Kadokawa, wasn't it? Yeah, because that means we'll get a lot of this stuff directly. Just, you know, it'll come very quickly to that app. We'll be able to access it and play around with it and read it. There'll be, you know, fewer steps to go through to get it out there, and Kadokawa is less likely to die because Kadokawa pulls the plug, and certainly publishers have been known to do that for things. But at least we have a better chance. You know, if it's an official thing, and especially if they're launching with 200 titles, that tells us it's a major initiative. So that's cool. All right. Good mix of news this week. Some exciting things, some less shocking things, you know, who knows. So I think for next season, I'm going to see about ways of making the news a little better. I'd like to, once I'm done with the news, record a sort of a teaser on the front to say, you know, stay tuned for the following news stories, and then do something with that. But that's going to require some more work. So if I can find somebody, hint, hint, who's willing to do a little video processing for me, we may be able to make the news even better. I can also do more recordings of it, so I'm smoother. You know, but right now, this is just playing around to get not playing around, but right now I'm doing it this way so I'm consistent at it, and then next season I can iterate. And thank you all for your comments last week about Season 3. As I said, we'll have another round of that. But I got a lot of great ideas written down as a result of that. So lots of thoughts for the next season. I'm sorry, Season 3. We're talking to a video. The next iteration of this. Oh, cool, Sebastian. So you're gonna watch the Anohana movie soon. That's cool. Yeah, Kadokawa is really pushing that that thing by, I think, doing by putting Evangelion on there, by putting Gundam on there. They're clearly trying to pull out the big guns to make that app successful and to make people really excited about it. So I think that's why they're doing all that, is because they want a lot of attention. I think the folks who want to read the Evangelion manga and the Gundam manga already have, but by putting those on that site, it gives it weight, and it tells people that this is a serious site. It's a little, I don't want to say silly, but it's marketing, I think. But it's good. I mean, put more manga out there in more ways we can see it. Now, of course, they didn't mention pricing either, so that'll be an interesting question. Is this going to require a monthly fee? Is it going to have ads? Who knows? There's going to be some way for them to make cash off that because of the rising use of mobile phones for manga in Japan. So they can't just say, oh, well, we'll release it for free and make the money off the print. No, they got to make the money off the digital as well. So we'll see what they do. And I'll pay a little bit of money for manga, especially compared to a full volume of manga. If I can get a whole bunch of stuff, released in that sort of magazine format weekly for the price of like one paperback volume per month, sure. Right, and it's battling piracy, exactly. That's a good thing. I am all for legal ways of accessing digital content reasonably. So the new artwork is Bubblegum Crisis up there, Pris with the various characters in Bubblegum Crisis. And you kind of can't see it, but there's a TARDIS down here. And a little bit of Matt Smith right down there. Oh, and then you can see a little further down the awesome hawk I got at Katsucon as well. Three-eyed hawk, which is from some video game, I'm sure. I'm just not familiar with it. So that's the new stuff there. All right, so I have half an hour before the Classic Club. I think we're going to do some otaku no cooking, and I'm going to make some icebox cookies. Or I'll make the dough for icebox cookies. That's the trick. We'll do it very quickly. And I trust that you all know how to cut a log of cookie dough and put it on baking sheets and bake it. I'm not going to show you how to do that because it's going to require, the dough needs to be chilled in the fridge for a few hours. But I trust you guys can figure that part out. Okay. Not too complicated. Let me just get us unhooked, make sure we're not tangled up too badly in cables and wires and such. Double check that. Good. All right, so let's head downstairs to the kitchen. I think the kitchen is pretty clean. I know I have some dishes drying, but I think it's okay. In other words, there aren't roaches crawling everywhere or anything. Not that I ever get that bad, but it's not too bad. Presentable, put it that way. Whew. Laptop gets hot when I'm streaming. No problem with these MacBook Pros. Turn some lights on so I will not trip and break the laptop. Oh yeah, a lot of dishes drying actually. That's fine. Okay, let me set up my little stand. I put the laptop on the bread machine. A little silly, but it works. Put it over one side. Put the microphone down there, where it can hear the entire room, and then we plug it in. And we'll do I'll grab my recipe. This recipe is straight from The Joy of Cooking, which is, as I mentioned before, kind of the Bible of recipe books. If you want one good reference, one solid book for recipes, that's the one to go for. Other books may give you better recipes in a particular genre, if you will. So if you want great Chinese food or great Italian, whatever, you're not necessarily going to find the perfect recipe here, but you will find a solid version of whatever you want here with very, very checked and double-checked instructions. So they're probably not going to give you the wrong instructions in here because it's been out for how long? 75 years? So yeah. Alright, so there's mac and cheese, there's white sauce, I think this is where it is. Let's see here, find the recipe. I thought I'd bookmarked it, but I did not. Go to cookies. You know it's an impressive book when in the index, a single letter goes on for multiple pages. So I'm in the C's now. Okay, coffee, coleslaw, cooking, cookies, icebox, page 776. Ah, there we go. Ah, I actually used the little red bookmark for that. Okay, so all we're going to do is basically throw the ingredients into the blender in stages, mix them up, and then form that into a log and chill it. It chills for, I think they don't say here, as I recall, they require, at least 4 hours in the refrigerator to chill. You can freeze them, but that means they will be frozen, so you can't just pull them out and cut them. You'll need to then defrost them in the refrigerator. So in other words, you can get them cold fast. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can then bake them quickly. You know, it's that sort of trade-off there. All right. Let me just switch some things around. I hope it's not 99 cents a chapter, because that's damn expensive. I mean, even by Japanese standards, that's expensive. When Shonen Jump is $5 for what, 25 issues, 25 chapters. So they can certainly do that. I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying I hope they don't. All right, so grab our thing here. And so we start with a few things. We're going to sift together a few ingredients. I'm just going to grab a sifter and dump my ingredients straight into there so I can then sift them. You probably want to see what I'm doing. Imagine that. So, as I mentioned before, I'm going to use a scale for this. So I'm going to do 200 grams of flour, which is I think about 1 1/4 cups of flour. Let's see here, 200 grams of flour. Yeah, maybe 1 1/4. Yeah, so 1 1/4 cups of flour. That's just all-purpose flour. There we go. 178. I might actually have that here. May not have to break out the other bag. Yay, 198. We'll try to get it all out. Come on, 200. Perfect. There's a little bit left in there. Then we're going to add 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. I'm also low on this, but I have another one. We'll grab a ½ teaspoon. So we'll need 3 of these. Baking powder gives rise. It helps the cookies to lift up while they're baking. It's why you see these in biscuits. And we're going to add a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to sprinkle salt into there until it's half full. There we go. That's one way of doing it. I can't see that. There we go. It's actually not quite half full, so we'll add a bit more. And so we're gonna sift that into the dough when we're ready. Now in the bowl, we're going to put in, how much is that? 160 grams of butter. It's about 1.5 sticks. I think we need to soften that. Is that correct? Softened. So I'm going to put that into a bowl, which I will then microwave. There we go. Actually, a lot of butter, but I think we can do it there. I mentioned what? 160 grams of butter. Now I'm going to soften this by putting it in the microwave, but you don't want to put it in there for like 5 minutes. It'll melt and burn. You want to put that in there for maybe 30 seconds at a time, and if you can get used to the idea of microwaving at less than full power, if you can figure out how to do that, and I've got that going there, that's a good idea too. Microwave it for 30 seconds at half power, for example, and that can get you where you need to go. This is awfully light butter, is that? No, that's butter. I want to make sure I didn't accidentally order, whipped cream butter or whipped butter, which is good, but not what I'm looking for. And I get this from a local dairy, so depending on the time of the year and the condition of the cows, the butter can end up looking a little different. That's part of nature. That's 163 grams of butter instead of 100, so that's fine. And I'm going to add to that, whoops, I messed up. I need 5 ounces of butter. Looking at the wrong thing. So I'm going to pull back some of this butter. There we go. So there's 5 ounces of butter. Easy enough. Yeah, I'm using my fingers. It's fine. Okay, then to that, then we're going to, again, I'm just going to put this in here for 30 seconds at half power. And I'll just soften it. And then we're going to put in 160 grams of sugar, it's about 2/3 of a cup, into the bowl of the standing mixer. And again, 160 grams. Yeah, I'm bouncing back and forth between ounces and grams. Sorry about that. And we will add that back in there. Our softened butter. Now, how do you know the butter is softened? What you're looking for is, it should not be melted. In other words, it's not a liquid. It's still solid. But if I touch it, it should kind of, it should bend away. We should be able to push it around. This actually is not really softened yet. It's pretty much exactly the same. It's slightly melty in spots. I'm going to put this in there for a little longer. I'm going to do 20 seconds at half power. I have not finished Koakaze yet. I don't go through anime that quickly, guys. Okay. Ooh, so we are getting a little bit of meltiness down there, which is not what I wanted, but that's okay. So this is obviously now a lot softer. So that's good. That was a little longer than ideal, but it'll be fun. All right, so we're gonna put that in there. I have a little butter on me, so I'm just gonna rub that off. And so I'm just gonna mix that up. Then we'll add 1 egg. on. Turn it off first. And I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. You can also add things like lemon zest. I think I might add some lemon juice, actually. Oh, I have... Well, yeah. I still have that half teaspoon, so I'm going to reuse that. Just do 4 of those. 4 half teaspoons is 2 teaspoons. 1, ni, sung, yon. So I'll mix that in. Yeah. And I think I will add a little bit of lemon juice. They say 1/4 teaspoon, so it's very little. And again, I'm going to use that same measuring spoon. Just use half of that for 1/4. Mix that in. Now we add those dry ingredients, the flour, the baking powder, and the salt. And a couple ways of doing this. I'm going to go a little lazy on it. I'm just going to pop that out and mix in about 1/3 of it. Put that to the side. And then mix that. Start slow so that the flour doesn't puff everywhere. Then the next 1/3, maybe, whoa. Actually, I'm going to go to the rest of this. That's fine. I'll do it in halves. There's some left on the base. And you mix until it's all the same consistency, i.e. you don't have some flour and some goopy bits, you don't have some dry dough and some wet dough, it should all be the same consistency. And indeed what we see here is this. It's a pretty standard dough consistency. It's actually pretty stiff. It's a pretty heavy, thick dough. And now we're going to roll it out. And the way we do that, take care of a few things here, is we're going to grab some wax paper, put that down on the work surface. We'll clean this off a little bit too, so we have some more room to work with. Ooh. A little bit of vanilla dripped down the side of this, so I just want to get that off. There we go. Over there. So I want to roll this into a log because this is going to be like a store-bought roll of cookie dough. You know, those logs of cookie dough. And this is not, not hard, not crazy. First thing to do is to scrape the dough off of the paddle. And of course, we all love to grab some dough off the paddle, but you want to get, a large amount of that off. We can lick that at some point if we want, but we also don't want to shortchange our dough too much. Okay. So I'm just going to dump this out in lumps here. because you'll get some sort of large pieces and some small pieces. You know, there'll be some large hunks in there and some small hunks. So we're not going to worry too much about that. We're just going to try to get it out here in roughly a cylinder. And we want it to be about 1 foot long. So think of a foot-long sub at your favorite sub shop. And that's about the length we're looking for here. Maybe a little smaller. And then you'll just firm that up a little bit. Again, we're not going too crazy here, but just making sure that we have roughly the same amount of dough all the way across. And now we're going to roll this up. So I'm going to take the dough and roll it like this, and I'm going to roll it up and just squeeze it into something kind of log-shaped. Actually, I'm going to wash my hands because I need to work with this dough directly. We're just going to use the wax paper to make a log out of it. That's going to be our wall, if you will. Let me actually zoom in a bit here. This is a good case for the zoom. If I can find the zoom control. There we go. So, by just folding this over and squeezing, I now have something a little closer to a log. Now I'm just going to firm that up a bit with a finger to make it more cylindrical. I'll wrap it again. Then I'm just going to roll this towards myself, and I'm squeezing. Whoops, got a bit of it coming off my fingers there. So I'm squeezing this so that it distributes out amongst its entire log. So I'm just going to try to squeeze this into a cylinder, and I'm going to roll this and keep on squeezing it. And you can kind of tuck it under and keep on squeezing it. Just keep on rolling, and there you have your dough. Now, this ends up with a pretty long, if I can tuck that under. There's the dough. But as you can see, these are going to be pretty small cookies. They're not going to, they'll puff up slightly, but they're going to be, you know, maybe 25% larger than this. So if you want larger cookies, you would make a shorter log and roll that out. But I'm okay with this. I'm okay with smaller cookies. So I'm just going to take that and put it in the fridge. There we go. And so, like I said, that will then need to go in and go in there for about 4 hours. And when they come, when they're fully chilled, you just take that, unwrap it, slice it with a knife into as many pieces as you want. Thicker makes for bigger cookies, obviously. Thinner makes smaller cookies and generally crisper cookies. If you get really, really thick, it's going to be hard for them to cook or bake for long enough to get both crispy on the outside and not still chewy, no, not just chewy, but uncooked on the inside. So don't try to make them, you know, that thick. They're just not going to be able to bake all the way through. But you know what cookies look like. So just stay reasonable, and you're good to go. You know, put those in your oven. I bake them at 350 degrees. Honestly, with cookies, you know, you can go ridiculous. You can go up to, I mean, if you try to bake at 200 degrees, that's way too low. They're never going to get hot enough to bake correctly. If you cook them at 500 degrees, they're going to burn. But 350 versus 375 versus even 400 isn't going to really kill your cookies. So I go with 350. You could try 375, 400 even. Play around, you're going to be fine. Nice. Slight hint of lemon. slight hint of lemon, and indeed, if you added a little bit of lemon icing to that, that would really give you the full lemon flavor. It's going to be good. Okay, so like 20 minutes, if that. Let me take us back upstairs. Nasty cough. Yeah, better not be getting sick. I should mention, I will be taking a vacation from the Saturday buffet for the last 2 weekends in March. I will actually be out of the country for the last 2 weekends in March. So we have another, I believe, 2 ONVs. Let me check that right now. No, I'm sorry. We have 1 more ONV. 1 more Saturday buffet, that is. So next week will be the last Saturday buffet. And then I'm going to do 1 extra one on April 2nd. I'm sorry, April 5th. The first Saturday in April. So we'll do one special buffet. So 1 more after this next week, and then a buffet in April. I got a special invitation to go up and see the Northern Lights with an astronomer. So, yeah. Can't turn that down. Come on. So I'll be out for 2 Saturdays. And there ain't going to be no internet connection worth talking about up there. That we can be sure of. All right, let me check something real quick. I want to see how long this movie is. We may be facing a full movie-length scenario here. Oh, no, I think it's just half an hour. Yeah, just half an hour. Have I seen this? I may have seen this. Apologies for all the weird audio stuff. I think I've seen this. Good. Okie doke. So, look back at what we've been talking about here. Sorry, I've been chatting there. Did I have a beach episode on my vacations in Japan? No, sadly. I was there in October, and it was actually rainy for almost the entire time. We had 3 typhoons come through Japan during the 10 days I was there. So it was not beach weather, sadly. So Mina tells me not to do a cooking show. I'm going to talk about anime and manga. So for some reason, cooking and anime don't mix. You know, those two should never be combined. It's like matter and antimatter. You know, talking about cooking just kills any interest in anime and manga. Good to know. I mean so. Yeah, next time I go to Japan, and I do plan to go back to Japan in a couple of years, and we'll see. I wouldn't mind going to a beach. I do definitely want to do a hot springs. I do want to give that a try at some point. My next vacation, next Japanese vacation. But yeah, I went to a hot spring. I just didn't go to the hot spring, to the baths. So yeah. Sadly, no beach episode. No girls in ridiculously skimpy bikinis. Now that I have Google Glass, I got to be more careful about that too. Folks will assume I'm being a perv. Okay. See, folks are talking about relationships in anime. Most relationships I see in anime are more Hollywood than reality, to be honest. Golden Time sounds familiar. I may have checked that out. Let me look at that real quick. I have not checked out Golden Time. I am curious. Interesting. Anime is lousy with cooking stuff, and manga too. There's plenty of stuff. I was tempted to go to a maid cafe while I was in Japan, actually, but I did not because I was A, American, and B, alone. So I was like, that's something I'm going to save for some other time when I'm more used to the protocol. Also, maid cafes are not obvious. There'll be a couple of maids scattered around Akihabara who will hand you, how to go to the cafe, but the advertisement papers. But those are going to be all in Japanese, generally speaking. I could probably talk to them and ask where should I go. But generally, the cafes are on like the 5th floor of some building. It's not like it's not obvious usually, for various reasons. It's quite interesting, maid culture in Japan. Speaking of which, if you didn't see on the website, I recently read a manga called Maid Shokun, which actually does a surprisingly good job of, while still being a light and fun, comedy. One more, I think. Excuse me. Managed to hit the sneeze button there. Besides being a light and fun comedy, also manages to look at the realities of the maid cafe business and the fact that it's a little closer to the adult business than the industry would generally have you believe. In this manga, for example, several of the girls are former prostitutes. A lot of them, have worked in the adult industry a lot, and there's pressure to turn the maid cafe into an adults-only establishment because then they can serve alcohol, things like that. It wouldn't turn into an adults-only establishment in that sense. But maid cafes are closer to that kind of entertainment than, especially in the eyes of society, and in terms of just sort of the law, than we tend to think. It's quite interesting. And of course, Maid Shokun is a manga. It's that is not necessarily reality, but I have not seen Log Horizon, Anime Guy. Not. Haven't seen it. I think. Let me just load it up here real quick. Oh yeah, no. MMO things, not my bag. I've seen .hack. That's all I need to see. I don't generally watch MMO shows. For me, .hack was the canonical MMO show, and I haven't come across an MMO show that does anything more interestingly than that did. So unless I hear, you know, huge accolades, I generally don't check them out. Again, nothing against them, just fair enough. Okay, so I think it is time for the Classic Club, so I'm going to stop the stream and start the Hangout. So head over to Google+, look for the Classic Club post when it appears, and we can all join in and start talking. So that'll be the plan. Thanks all for watching, and see you in a few minutes over on the Classic Club.